Well, welcome along to Brands Hatch, everybody. Round 3, race 5 of the 2025 Ferrari Challenge UK is coming up for you. The cars making their way out onto the circuit in what are, Jack, going to be challenging conditions. 30-minute race plus 1 lap. But in this ambient temperature that we've got, the drivers are going to feel it. The tyres are certainly going to feel it.
Yeah, they really, really are. You're going to have to focus so much on tyre preservation throughout these 30 minutes plus 1 lap. So you might be quick at the start, but that could compromise you towards the end of the race.
Yeah, and certainly the temperature has built since free practice this morning. It has got even higher following qualifying. So it is a new foray out onto the circuit. Air temperature is now 30 degrees. Track temperature is now 46 degrees. I can't imagine what the temperature is inside the cockpit.
Yeah, whilst they've got air conditioning, it doesn't necessarily mean it is the luxury air conditioning to which we would normally expect. There will be at least a little something for the drivers just to keep themselves cool. And of course, they've got all that time on the grid whilst they're sat there warming up in the cockpit of the car as well.
Yep, so this is the introduction, 2025 was the introduction of the brand new Ferrari 296 Challenge specification car, which made its debut in Europe last year, makes its debut in the UK Championship this year. The old car was a V8 engined car. This is a V6 engine car. It's a twin turbo. It's quite a wide V angle as well. It's a 120 degree V angle, but 690 brake horsepower. That's a lot of power to tame.
It is a lot of power, but drivers seem to be well and truly there because the development that was put in by Ferrari is clearly working, because we went quicker this morning than we went last year in the 488 Evo. So it shows that all of that data and all of the analytics that has gone into developing the 296, it's working, Mark, quicker than ever.
It is. It's powered by the Tipo F163 engine, which actually you trace the main block of that engine. It is what appears in the hypercar, so it's got its own DNA, similar to the hypercar, of course, which won at Le Mans. Let's have a quick look back, though, before we then focus on what's going to go on in this race. Let's have a quick look back at what happened in the qualifying session that happened earlier on this morning. Qualifying about to get underway here at Brands Hatch. Gilbert Yates goes on to pole position.
Mike Dewhurst pole position in Copa-Shell.
So Jack, Gilbert Yates onto pole position. Of course, that is overall pole, but also pole in Trofeo Pirelli for the 13th consecutive time. And Mike Dewhurst with his 2nd pole in Copa-Shell of the season.
Yeah, qualifying, wow. If we could just watch that over and over and over again, there would be a lot of happy people, I am sure. Just take, for example, row 2 and row 3, all within the best part of a 10th of each other. And throughout the session we saw it, there was 46 threes with 4 drivers in that band of a 10th of a second. Then that became 46 zeros, and it was like the track was evolving. Whilst it was getting hotter, drivers were getting quicker.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, at one point, the top 4 were separated by 65 thousandths. Then the top 4 became separated by 41 thousandths of a second. It was all rather close, to say the least. And even when you look further down through the grid, the likes of Darren Howell was 1/1000th of a second slower than John Marcar. As I say, we've seen over the last few years the Ferrari 488 Evo being the mainstay of the Ferrari Challenge UK. 296 was introduced for this year. We got Jonathan Satchell to just show us around the brand new car.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Satchell. I've had the privilege in racing in the Ferrari Challenge Series since 2021. The first 3 seasons were in a 488 Challenge Evo car, and this most recent season is in the 296 Challenge. So one of the most notable differences about the 296 compared to our 488 is the aerodynamics. There is 18% more downforce on this car, and the way it manifests itself is that there's a lot more downforce coming through this front bumper assembly, through across the bonnet and across the top of the car. So when you point it in, it definitely feels much more direct in terms of the way the steering handles. You don't get understeer nearly as much. And also I think that's assisted by the fact that these tyres are quite a lot wider than the previous tyres on the 488. So let's take a look on the interior. Frankly, it's not that different. Steering wheel setup very similar, centre console a little bit different. In fact, I like the buttons more, it's clearer to be able to work with. So the car feels very similar in that regard. There is, however, one huge difference, and that is the 488, frankly, it was a sauna. And this one is a fridge. Ferrari have worked out how to make air conditioning work, and this thing keeps you cooler throughout the race. It makes a big difference. So I suppose this is where they say it all happens, and it is, after all, a prancing horse car, so this is very special indeed. It's lost 2 cylinders, but gained 20 horsepower. What's notable about this, guys, you have to rev it harder, but when you get it right, and you just rev it just before the rev limiter, it really feels great, and it is a genuinely quicker, more powerful car. One thing I'm taking a bit of time to get used to is the brakes. They are very different. So in the 488, you could stamp on the brakes as hard as you like, and I tend to be a late braker, and the car would come to a very quick stop under that braking style. These are much more sophisticated brakes. They behave differently. There's a lot of computer trickery going on with the brake-by-wire, and it's taking me a bit of time to get used to a more modulated feel of the brake pedal. It is definitely the biggest change in the car. We've talked about all these different attributes of the car, the aero, the power, the front tyre width, etc., etc. All of these make a big difference. But what does it add up to? Well, astonishingly, here at Alton Park this weekend, most of us drivers are between 5 and 6 seconds a lap quicker than we were in our previous cars. That's an extraordinary gain, and it's just a great affirmation of how good this car is.
So high praise indeed from Johnny Satchell, who unfortunately isn't on the entry list for this weekend for the new Ferrari 296 Challenge specification car. And interesting to understand and hear from him there, Jack, that it's not one single area where this car has evolved from the 488 Evo. It's a whole range of different areas that deliver that different performance.
Yeah, and that just sort of further solidifies Ferrari's commitment to the Challenge Series and championships, not only in the UK, but around the world as well. And the brake-by-wire, very interesting. That's sort of by-wire systems have been heavily adopted in aviation, where high performance is absolutely mandatory.
So we look forward to the grid from the commentary box. We look forward to the race getting underway. Down there on the grid, feeling the tension and the pressure as we look forward to this 5th race of the season. We've got Amanda Stretton, who's down there with Dave Richardson.
Tell you what, we're feeling not only the stress and tension, we're feeling the temperature through the tarmac into our training shoes, Amanda.
It certainly is. Just touching the tarmac, you can really feel how much heat is being held into this really dark surface. And of course, heat is the topic as we stand down here, because it's the hottest day of the year. I think we've broken a record today for June as well, 32 degrees or something. And the drivers are going to be really feeling it. But as we just heard there from Jonathan Satchell, these cars have got air conditioning, and Ferrari have actually managed to produce a race car that really keeps the drivers cool.
And that is going to be worth so much for them. Of course, we're on the Indy circuit today, Amanda, race 1 of the weekend on the Indy circuit. Tomorrow, we're on the GP circuit. A lot for these drivers to think about here on the Indy circuit, because it is a short lap. Good size grid of cars across Trofeo Pirelli and Copa-Shell. A very dramatic qualifying from earlier on today, perhaps the most dramatic we've seen. It's going to be a very busy place. That's what I'm trying to say. I kind of did an Amanda explanation of that, really, didn't I? I took my time with it, but it's going to be there's a lot for the drivers to think about during this race.
There is, yeah. Really short track, this sub-minute lap times. This is as much of a straight as the drivers really get, because all the rest of the track, you're basically exiting a corner, preparing for the next. So yeah, there is an awful lot to think about, and it's a tight grid. I mean, we saw in qualifying just how tight they were. But let's start moving, because there are some really standout performances that I think we should talk about.
And this straight, as you mentioned, is not straight at all. There's a camber. I mean, if I laid down here, I would roll to the grass. In fact, I would roll into Joe's car here. And furthermore, you go up there. I mean, it's difficult for me to describe it, I suppose, but it's off camber, on camber. It's not a straight.
Amanda, the point.
Right. I didn't do that very well either, did I? Best of luck to you, Joe. Have a great race. Well done. Good qualifying.
Yes,
and
obviously rubbing off on you.
Maybe so. Maybe so.
But yeah, so we saw some really strong performances throughout the sessions as well. That you're about to say something.
I was just about to say that what's wonderful down here on the grid, and you and I get to be in this privileged position, Darren Howell is always supremely supported, isn't he? Family, friends, the whole gamut are here. They all, you know, they really get behind him, and he's doing really, really well. Great to see you, and thank you. Darren,
the Howell fan club.
It's good, isn't it? It's great to see.
It's wonderful to see. But no, I want to move down here because, I mean, Fedor
Yes.
is a driver who, I mean, we've talked about quali and just how incredibly close it was. But Fedor, for a period of time, actually had pole. And then he was sort of bumping around the front row of the grid. Did you have a word with him in between qualifying and now?
No. But Fedor Samarukov, you're absolutely right to point that out. At points during the course of qualifying today, he was right at the very top of the chart. A great, great story.
Absolutely. So I think we should have a word with him. We haven't actually spoken to Callum.
Allow me. Whilst I'm here, I'll barge Johnny Kane, his driver coach, out of the way, who thankfully is a really polite gentleman, and he'll allow me to grab a quick word with Callum. Is this a pre-race routine, jiggling with your fingers on your knees like that, Callum? That was quite entertaining.
Yeah, I'm just waiting to go.
Of course, and it must be, you know, from a racing driver's point of view, is it a really nervous time, Callum, or is it one that you can cope with? How do you feel?
Well, when I qualify better, I'm more nervous. Like if I'm third and I've qualified third, I'm really nervous because I have to hold on to that. But right now I'm quite relaxed. Just excited to, I don't know, hopefully overtake people, but I don't know.
Well, we wish you well, Callum. And I was just looking at the rear view screen because these 296 Challenge cars have got a big safety bulkhead right behind them, which means they can't have an internal rear view mirror. They have to have a screen, which actually gives you a better picture of what's behind you than an ordinary mirror would do anyway. I think Amanda has caught up with Fedor Samarukov.
I certainly have. Fedor, I'm sorry, I've just opened the door and let all the hot air in and cool air out. You had an absolutely storming qualifying session. Have you and your driver coach been really sort of working through this track here at Brands, or did everything just fall in place?
No, we haven't really been working on it. I just did some Mazda racing here a long time ago. And yeah, we did some sim with Josh as well. So yeah.
But listen, this is a really strong qualifying for you because you're on row 2. But I mean, we've seen just how close it is up the front. So what are going to be your targets?
Finish the race. Bring the car home. Yeah.
Right, you do that. I'm going to shut the door and then he can stay cool. And Dave, you're alongside.
I've got about 10 seconds to speak to Paul Simerson, who has gone up from Copachel to Trofeo Pirelli. And Paul, it looked like you've been there all the time in qualifying. Well done, friend.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Yeah, I feel like I've got a bit of a nosebleed this high up the grid. But no, so I say hi to everybody watching at home, especially my pals at EJ Churchill's. They're all streaming it. And look, we'll just have, hopefully for a clean race, we'll have some fun.
Have a great race, Paul Simerson. There we have it. I mean, we are being ushered off the grid like never before. But just before we do, Gilbert Yates, Amanda, what a qualifying today.
I mean, I would go over there, but I think the marshals will actually get very cross with us. But we are going to just have to shout out to Gilbert Yates because he put that car on pole. The car was damaged. He had no radio. And even though he had that coming together at the very beginning of qualifying, it was a lap to behold.
Absolutely. So, live from the grid, we're about to go racing on the Indy circuit. Here at Brands Hatch, it is Ferrari Challenge UK, and it's the Werrell team up there in the commentary studio.
Thank you very much. Yep, so late off the grid they will go. The car's just heading on their formation lap, which gives us just about enough time to rattle through the grid for you for this 5th race of the 2025 championship season. It is Gilbert Yates on pole position with Pranav Vangala that sits alongside, but not much time separating them in qualifying. Row 2 of the grid sees Paul Simerson line up alongside Fedor Samarukov. And then as we head on to the 3rd row of the grid on the inside of row number 3, it is Callum Leatham with the first of our Copa Shell drivers, which is Mike Dewhurst. He is the Copa Shell pole sitter in reality. Then row 4 of the grid on the inside of the 4th row of the grid, it is Paul Rogers and Peter Hunter in the light blue car, who had a win last time out at Alton Park. And row 5 of the grid is where we see John Markar and Darren Howell. Then we move on to the 6th row of the grid. On the inside of the 6th row of the grid, it's Joseph Dean, who's got Paul Dixon for company. And the final row of the grid is going to be the number 55 car in the hands of Hussein Sert. And for company, he will have Stephen Dobson, who had qualified at the back of the grid anyway, but was given a 10-place grid drop because he did change tyres after that small incident in qualifying where he bumped into the car, or Gilbert Yates bumped into his car, decide as you will, but that is why he was given a 10-place grid drop. But mattered not, he was at the back of the grid anyway.
He did indeed. So the clock begins to tick as they head on to their 2nd green flag warming up lap, getting as much temperature into those Pirelli tyres as possible. Gilbert Yates, no stranger to the front row of the grid. Pranav Vangala will naturally try and close him down. I'm really interested to see what Paul Simerson can do from the inside of the 2nd row.
Yeah, Paul was saying to me earlier on, he was the one that suggested he wanted to move from Copa Shell up to Trofeo Pirelli. He's already been twice a runner-up in Copa Shell, and he thought he might be possible for him to get inside the top 3. Well, he qualified in 3rd position, so can he hang on to it? You can tell the different classes apart because look at the sun visors. If it's a red sun visor strip, then that is a car that runs in Trofeo Pirelli. If it's got the yellow sun visor strip, that is a Copa Shell car. So we will get ready to go racing for the 5th time this year in Ferrari Challenge UK. So Gilbert Yates is the yellow car that sits there on pole position. It's the dark metallic green car with its white and yellow flashes of Pranav Vangala that sits alongside the champion, alongside the man who finished 3rd in the championship in Trofeo Pirelli last year. The sun glinting beautifully off these Ferrari 296 Challenge cars. And as they head up towards the red lights, which are on the gantry, we're about to get the first race of the weekend underway. The lights go out, and it looks as though it's a good start from Paul Simerson, who might just nip up the inside of Pranav Vangala as they head up towards Paddock Hill Bend for the first time. It is going to be Gilbert Yates that leads the way, and Paul Simerson has capitalised and has taken the opportunity to go through and ahead of Pranav Vangala. And the man who has moved from Copa Shell to Trofeo Pirelli for this weekend is now up into 2nd position. Down to 3rd goes Pranav Vangala, but he's already under pressure from Fedor Samarukov.
He is Fedor Samarukov now looking for the cutback as they work their way onto the Cooper straight. Brilliantly worked move if he can make it stick. On the brakes in towards Surtees, Pranav Vangala, very, very brave all the way around the outside, manages to hold on to 3rd place. With all that battling, that's allowing Paul Simerson just to build up a couple of cars' lengths between himself and the sparring duo behind. Gilbert Yates is starting to make good his lead margin. Peter Hunter was involved in a scrap on the opening lap of that race, having had a good start. He worked his way through and past Paul Rogers.
He did, and even more importantly, he got past the pole sitter, which was Mike Dewhurst. So the light blue car of Peter Hunter leads in the early stages. Copa Shell in this one. They're sprinting their way up towards the braking area for Druids for the 2nd time this time through. In Copa Shell, it is Peter Hunter from Mike Dewhurst from Paul Rogers, the top 3 at this stage. For the overall lead of the race, Gilbert Yates will look to see if he can just stretch his lead advantage, and already you can just see he is starting to edge away from the likes of Paul Simerson, who's there in 2nd place, and Pranav Vangala, who's there in 3rd. Everybody, though, safely through the first couple of laps, aren't they?
They are indeed, still potentially working a bit of temperature into those Pirelli tyres. They will be there or thereabouts now. Paul Simerson soaking up the pressure from Pranav Vangala with a flash of the lights out through the final corner. We see the black machine of John Marker still trying to close down on that pack up the road, but Peter Hunter, he's trying to make good his lead.
He is, yeah. So up towards Druids. Paul Simerson really feeling the pressure, isn't he, from Pranav van Gala? Those two are pretty much inseparable. Pranav van Gala with a good run coming out of Druids up towards Graham Hill Bend, but Simerson just chops across the nose of the third place car. And those two squabbling is really helping Gilbert Yates to pull away. Fedor Samarikov in the background is coming under pressure from, that will be the number 95 car in the hands of Callum Leatham. The best of the squabbles at the moment at the sharp end in Trofeo Pirelli is for second and third position. Paul Simerson still just able to keep at bay Pranav van Gala as they come over the start-finish line and complete this time through lap number 4.
Paul Simerson, very clever driving, taking the wider exit out of Clark Curve to maximise any sort of defensive opportunity that he may need to require from Pranav van Gala. Fedor Samarikov, good spot. He's under big pressure from Callum Leatham, but in turn that's allowed the Copa Shell drivers to close in. More importantly, Peter Hunter still being hunted down by Copa Shell pole sitter, car number 78, Mike Dewhurst, who in turn also has Paul Rogers in tow.
Yeah, it's a great little squabble, isn't it? It's 5 296s all together as they then flick their way through Surtees and McLaren and up towards Clearways Corner. And this will be the squabble for 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th places that's about to feed its way over the start-finish line any second now. And Peter Hunter still leading the way in the light blue car, of course. Remember, Copa Shell at the moment. But ideally, what Peter wants to do is try and get past those Trofeo Pirelli cars ahead and try and get at least one of them between himself and Mike Dewhurst, who sits right behind the light blue car at the moment.
Yeah, Peter Hunter will be desperate to get some cars between himself and Mike Dewhurst, continuing to give chase. Fedor Samarikov is still soaking up that pressure from Callum Leatham, but for how long? 24 3/4 minutes of this race still to go, plus the extra lap. Is this the move for Callum Leatham? A look to the inside. Fedor Samarikov comes over, chops off the nose and ensure that he holds on towards his 4th place on the road at the moment, but the Copa Shell drivers slowly starting to get impatient. Peter Hunter is desperate to work his way away from Copa Shell pole sitter Mike Dewhurst, and the best way to do that is to get a couple of cars in between himself and his rival.
Yeah, so can't quite do that just as yet. We've had fastest lap set by Gilbert Yates last time through as a 46.148. That is nearly 1.3 seconds quicker than last year. Callum Leatham there is able to move ahead of Fedor Samarikov as he made a small mistake going around through Druids, and now Peter Hunter has capitalised that up as well. And is that a problem for Fedor Samarikov, because he's losing places like a stone here? He has had 3 places, 4 cars go past him here, so Fedor Samarikov, I think, might have some sort of issue.
Yeah, it's looking that way. Paul Rogers goes through, so too does the number 5 of Darren Howell. Back over the line goes Gilbert Yates to tick another lap in the book. Paul Simerson in 2nd place and Pranav van Gala still sparring away. Are we going to see Fedor Samarikov work his way into the pit lane? No, not this time. He continues on for now. Peter Hunter, his wish finally came true, but he's still being hunted down by Mike Dewhurst as we look back to 2nd place. Up at Druids, Simerson still soaking up the pressure from Pranav van Gala. Pranav van Gala is just edged wide onto the edge of the circuit. 2nd place up the inside, and Pranav van Gala somehow manages to find some room. Paul Simerson now being ushered towards the grass, almost contact between the pair of them. Van Gala up into 2nd, Simerson down to 3rd.
That was tight, that was hard racing, but it is Pranav van Gala who finally is able to unlock the door and sneak through into 2nd position, and now he's looking to try and pull away from Paul Simerson if at all possible. So over the start-finish line comes his number 29 car in the hands of Pranav van Gala in his newly acquired 2nd place. Paul Simerson down into 3rd place, which is where he qualified. We've got Callum Leatham sitting there in 4th, and Peter Hunter in the light blue car still continues to lead Copa Shell at this stage. So Paul Simerson, what can he do in this race? Can he start to get back towards Pranav van Gala as into the pit lane does finally come Fedor Samarikov, as expected. So the number 88 car has come into the pit lane. Hopefully they'll be able to sort him out and he will rejoin the race, but any chance of a result, Jack, has gone.
It unfortunately has. There's some good battles going on further down the order, one of which is John Markar. He is currently sat in 11th place. He's hunting down the 25 of Stephen Dobson. Up the road from Stephen Dobson is Paul Dixon. It's a good little scrap working its way through the final corner at the moment. 2 Copa Shell drivers, one of which is a Trofeo Pirelli, that being Markar at the tail end of that little scrap. They're working their way back over the line once again to tick another lap in the book. It was a good lap from Pranav van Gala last time through. Improvements across the board. He's going to be trying to he's going to try and hunt down championship leader Gilbert Yates.
Yeah, the one thing you can't do, though, too early on is push your tyres too much, because you'll simply run out of Pirellis by the end of the race. So tyre conservation may work, and those that have pushed too hard in the early stages, it may come back and bite them later on. Stephen Dobson has been quite impressive. He had his problems in qualifying, where himself and Gilbert Yates argued over the same piece of tarmac. That meant that he suffered some damage to his wheel rims, so he had to change the tyres, which gave him a 10-place grid penalty. Well, he's worked his way from 14th now up into 10th position. New fastest lap of the race last time through, did we not?
Yeah, Pranav Van Gala onto a 46.065, so 3/10 best part of quicker than Gilbert Yates. Car number 12 receiving a track limits warning, so Joseph Dean clearly pushing hard, trying to close in on the trio up the road. The next car he will see will be John Marcar, and want to try and close in as quickly as possible. They're just heading up towards Druids at the moment, and it's ebbing and flowing, but nobody's really making those inroads that they want in this stage of the race.
I noticed that Fedor Samarokov has trundled his way back down the pit lane and has re-entered the race, but of course he is now somewhat adrift of the rest of the pack. Race leader has completed 11 laps as he comes over the start-finish line. Fedor Samarokov will only complete his 9th next time through. The number 25 car of Steve Dobson has made some good progress through the order as yet, having started off the tail end of the field. He would desperately like to try and squeeze his way through and ahead of the number 13 car of Paul Dixon, who represents Dick Lovett Swindon, that lies directly ahead. Now, he needs to be a little bit closer too, because he's not close enough through Paddock Hill Bend. He won't be close enough as they head up towards the braking area for Druids. Two similarly liveried cars, but there's a little bit more white, isn't there, on the number 13 car, and a little bit more red on the number 25. That's the best way to tell them apart.
Yeah, and Stephen Dobson, the front of that car, looks very angry indeed as he closes yet further onto the 13 of Paul Dixon, and it is just a bit of a waiting game now, because they can't afford to scrap too much, as John Marcar is well and truly there. If anything, I'd say he's closed in on Stephen Dobson over the previous couple of laps. Through the final corner and Clark Curve they will go back along the Brabham Straights to tick yet another lap in the book. They just cannot wait around, as the number 12 machine of Joseph Dean is going to start closing in. Joseph Dean last time through, in fact, lost a bit of time, but you can tell he's pushing, especially with the track limits warning.
Yeah, thanks to our roving reporter Dave Richardson, who informs me that the issue for Fedor Samarokov was that it thrown up an error code on the dash, and therefore, understandably, he brought the car into the pit lane to make sure that that was not going to cause a problem with the car. They've reset that and he's back out there, so brilliant work by the team to get him back out there, and he is now hopefully back up to the kind of pace that he should be doing. He did a 57.4 last time through, so that's the kind of pace that most are doing, so all is well. But of course he's lost all of that time earlier on. Still the fight over the start-finish line. Stephen Dobson now coming under more pressure, isn't he, from the number 16 car of John Marcar, and that's just allowing the 13 to pull away a little bit more, which is going to be Paul Dixon. He's just edging further up the road, isn't he?
He is indeed, and he'll be keeping an eye on that rear view camera, just knowing that Marcar is applying all the relevant pressure onto Steve Dobson. There was almost a change coming out of Paddock Hill Bend. Around Druids they naturally fall line astern. Back down the hill, a big wobble, however, that time from John Marcar. That will have cost him a little bit of time, and all that hard work, he's got to put it back in again.
Yeah, absolutely. So he will try and edge right up onto the coattails of Stephen Dobson. He was almost there by the time they got up towards the end of the Cooper Straight. McLaren and Surtees just heading round through Clark Curve any second now. He'll pick up a tow from the Cooper Shell car that lies ahead of his Trofeo Pirelli machine. But again, it's such a short straight here at Brands Hatch that you exit Clark Curve, and a blink of the eye later, you're into the braking area for Paddock Hill Bend. Very, very difficult, isn't it, to try and overtaking cars which are mechanically identical.
Yeah, and when you're utilising all 690 horsepower, as you say, Paddock Hill Bend arrives very, very quickly indeed. So for Marcar at the moment, biding his time, 17.5 minutes plus 1 lap to decide exactly where he's going to make another move for this position. It won't be a positioning class, it would be a position overall, and it would put him in theory inside the top 10, which is exactly what Marcar will have wanted. Just keeping an eye on Peter Hunter. It seems like Mike Dewhurst is closing him down for the lead in Cooper Shell.
Yeah, Mike Dewhurst was 0.2 of a second quicker than the light blue car for the lead of Cooper Shell last time through. So we'll just keep an eye on that one, as back over the start-finish line comes the Stephen Dobson and John Marcar squabble. So let's just run you through the order then as we head towards the halfway point of the 30 minutes plus 1 lap. Number 1, Gilbert Yates leads the way by nearly 4 3/4 seconds now from 29 Pranav Vangala in second place. Third is 77 Paul Simonson, and fourth is 95 Callum Leatham. Fifth place is 82 Peter Hunter. That's a light blue car which is coming under increasing amounts of pressure from the number 78 car of Mike Dewhurst. Peter Hunter leads Cooper Shell at this stage as he comes through now and over the start-finish line, but he does have Mike Dewhurst right behind him, and then also the 7th place car which completes the Cooper Shell podium. Number 20 Paul Rogers isn't too far away. 8th place is number 5 Darren Howell. 9th place is 13, which is Paul Dixon, and Stephen Dobson, the number 25 car, completes the top 10.
Does indeed. A good shout with the number 20 of Paul Rogers. I think Mike Dewhurst knows if he continues to battle Peter Hunter, albeit he has lost a bit of time over the previous couple of laps, it is Paul Rogers that is absolutely there and ready to close them down as a duo and maybe work his way onto a higher step of the Cooper Shell provisional podium. 15 3/4 minutes of the race still to go. Gilbert Yates' lead is ebbing and flowing. It's back down to 4.1 seconds. A few laps ago it was 5.1, so tyre preservation will be at the forefront of their mind, and at this stage in the race you don't really want to push that hard. Further down the order there's a good little battle. Joseph Dean is coming under big pressure from the 55 Hussein Sert. He seems to have come out of nowhere, and all of a sudden I think Joseph Dean is realising that.
Yeah, absolutely. So over the start-finish line, those two come fighting over what will be 12th and 13th positions. So the yellow car is Hussein Sert, and Joseph Dean is the largely white and blue car that lies directly ahead, hoping for a better weekend than he had up at Alton Park. So we hit the halfway point now of this race, 30-minute race plus an extra lap, 15 minutes to go as they come down in towards the braking area for Graham Hill Bend. They're on lap number 18 at the moment. Our race leader is on lap number 19, because over the start-finish line has come Gilbert Yates, and I think what he's doing now is just controlling the pace at the front. It doesn't matter if he gives a 1/10 of a second away to Pranav Vangala in the last few laps, because he's just eased his pace a little bit.
He has somewhat. Hussein Sert gets a really good run out of Clark Curve. This could be the move. He was so late on the brakes in towards Clearways, really started to close down that of Joseph Dean, and it seemed like as well Joseph Dean is just looking after his tyres. Hussein Sert, he was using absolutely every inch of Brands Hatch circuit. Even I think 2 of his Pirellis were onto the white line, so he's really pushing on. But is that going to come back to bite him towards the end of this race? 14 minutes still to go. Hussein Sert continues to apply the pressure. What of Peter Hunter and Mike Dewhurst? The pair of them have worked away now from the number 20 of Paul Rogers, so they can, in theory, resume their battle for first and second in Cooper Shell.
Yeah, that battle that we're looking at for 12th and 13th between Joseph Dean and Hussein Sert is shortly about to be gobbled up by Gilbert Yates, our race leader, who has seen his lead advantage tumble in the last few laps. He was 0.3 of a second slower than Pranav Vangala last time through, so the gap is down to just 3 3/4 seconds first to second place. We've also now got the battle fully formed again for 9th, 10th and 11th place, because Paul Dixon, Stephen Dobson and then John Markar, the number 16 black car, are all together as they work their way out of Graham Hill Bend and along the Cooper Straight. So at the moment it's the Dick Lovett-Swindon number 13 car that leads the Dick Lovett-Swindon number 25 car, and then it is the Grapel Birmingham number 16 car that's next up.
It is indeed, as it seems like the number 13 of Paul Dixon has just got a bit more breathing room than compatriot behind, because Stephen Dobson will see that John Markar is there or thereabouts. We've still got plenty of time left in the race for further overtaking opportunities to present themselves, and up the inside later on the brakes through Paddock Hill Bend, maybe even almost a bit of contact with race leader Gilbert Yates. Hussein Sert almost got shuffled wide towards the gravel.
Oh, yes, Gilbert Yates was very decisive with that overtake, came from a long way back, was fully alongside, but I think Hussein Sert was almost caught out by how far back and how confident Gilbert Yates was on the brakes, so they just about avoided each other, or as you say, if there was contact, it was just the lightest of touches between the pair, but that would have spiked the heart rate for both drivers, in particular Gilbert Yates, our championship leader. So over the start-finish line comes that fight that we've been concentrating on for 9th, 10th and 11th place. That's for 5th and 6th in Copa Shell, with the car that's 5th then in Trofeo Pirelli. And now for Gilbert Yates, there's more traffic to deal with, and that will be the car of Joseph Dean that is about to be lapped by our race leader. So up towards Paddock Hill Bend, bright lights come on Gilbert Yates. He squeezes up the inside of Joseph Dean, who sees him coming. So that is another back marker that has now been dealt with, but Gilbert Yates was a full second slower than Pranav Van Gala through that traffic that time through. Gap is down to 2.5 seconds.
Yeah, and whilst Pranav Van Gala has got to deal with the same traffic, he's doing so slightly more efficiently. It's just allowing him to close that gap. Peter Hunter still under pressure from Mike Dewhurst, but no further inroads being made by way of a positional change. Gilbert Yates through Surtees, McLaren, Clearways, and then on towards Clark Curve. 2.494 that lead margin last time through. Pranav Van Gala, has he managed to work his way through and past the number 12 machine, was it, that's closing them down, that of Joseph Dean? No, it was the number 12 of Joseph Dean. Over the line goes Pranav Van Gala, loses a little bit of time, but now there's no further cars between himself and race leader Gilbert Yates. We have had a change further down the order as well. I think now the number 16 machine of John Markar has finally managed to pick the pocket of Stephen Dobson for 10th place.
Yeah, it's taken a while, hasn't it? But yeah, finally the number 16 car of Greypool Birmingham's John Markar goes through, and now we can have a quick look and see exactly what happened. It was coming out of Druids, where there was a big sideways moment for Stephen Dobson, and he left a couple of 11s, didn't he, as you would call them, on the racetrack there, and no second opportunity needed. John Markar just took his usual racing line, squeezed his way through.
Yeah, forced the mistake. The Pirellis were doing everything they could to keep the Ferrari 296 challenge car pointing in a straight line, and some quick reaction from Stephen Dobson just made sure that it was only time and a single position that he lost. But that has now unleashed John Markar onto the coattails of Paul Dixon. Peter Hunter back over the line, and Mike Dewhurst. That's been ebbing and flowing, but no further changes there. And very, very wide all of a sudden from the number 16, John Markar. Did he just arrive into Clearways a bit hot?
Well, he had a bit of a wiggle, and then he had another second wiggle, so I do wonder if he's sort of just been pushing a little bit hard in the last couple of laps, and now the tyres are reminding him that it's a warm day, and just sort of rein it back in a little bit, because I think tyre management is key in this one. We've also now just had a change, and that is simply Fedor Samarakov diving up the inside of Darren Howell, but of course Fedor lost those 2 laps earlier on, so he is still working his way back through the order and is running in 14th and last position at the moment. Pranav Van Gala bringing that lead advantage down again, isn't he?
He is indeed. A purple sector 3 last time through, over sector 2, pardon me, half a second quicker than Gilbert Yates. 2.3 seconds the lead margin, and then into the pit. Is that John Markar bringing it in earlier? No, is it Fedor
Samarakov again, I'm afraid.
Yeah, so Fedor Samarakov back into the pit lane. We did mention that John Markar looked like the car was getting rather hot, or the Pirellis had been overworked somewhat over the previous couple of laps. He's got the car back under his spell and is now starting to close back in on the 13 of Paul Dixon. Peter Hunter, he's been soaking up all of that pressure from Mike Dewhurst, and he's not really faltered. But of course, he's bouncing back, or he's bouncing off a race win at Alton Park.
He is, yep. So the light blue car that leads Copa Shell comes over the start-finish line. Peter Hunter still in 5th overall in this race at the wheel of the number 82 JCT 600 Leeds machine. But look in his mirrors, who's there? It is the runner-up from last year's champion, a chip, which is Mike Dewhurst, another one of the drivers representing Dick Love at Swindon. The pair of them climb the hill up towards the braking area for Druids. And Peter Hunter is going to have to continue to work for this one. 8 minutes still remaining, plus, of course, that extra lap as well.
Yeah, so not that long left in this race. Returning to the circuit is Fedor Samarakov, just making sure he abides by the blue flags on pit exit. The number 16 of John Markar is really starting to apply the pressure now on to Paul Dixon. Down the hill in towards Graham Hill Bend they will go, and onto the Cooper Straight. He's running out of opportunities, but as you say, 7 minutes and 50 seconds still to go.
Yep, so along the Cooper Straight they'll go. John Mark are already having overtaken one Copa Shell car, which was Stephen Dobson. So if he can squeeze his way through and ahead of the number 13, that is another Copa Shell car he's overtaken. So 2 overtakes, but it's not going to gain him any more championship points because they're in a different class, aren't they, in reality? It's the where you finish in your respective class, whether it be Trofeo Pirelli or Copa Shell, that gives you the championship points.
Well, bragging rights he's fighting over at the moment, but if he can work his way through and past that car, it's clear road up the road, and he can focus on catching the next Copa Shell car, which will be Darren Howell. Gilbert Yates continues to lead, but now the lead margin down to 1.8 seconds. Pranav Vangala, he's closing in.
Yeah, now it's that case of Pranav Vangala. He's managed his tyres a little better. We will find out. Over the start-finish line comes the squabble for the lead of Copa Shell. Peter Hunter having to dive up the inside of cars decisively and wiggle his way through. That was Hussein Sert that saw the leaders of Copa Shell coming and moved out of harm's way. So the top 2 in Copa Shell nose to tail. The top 2 in Trofeo Pirelli still a 2nd and 3/4 apart. So Pranav Vangala has still got a chunk of work to do here if he wants to catch the overall race leader. But yeah, Copa Shell, good little squabble, isn't it? Peter Hunter with his first win in Copa Shell last time out. Mike Dewhurst has already had 2 wins in Copa Shell so far this year.
Yeah, I think Peter Hunter would have felt like that was a long time coming. A 3rd and a 2nd at Navarra. Finally got back onto the podium the first race at Alton Park, and then took to the top step of the podium, and will want to do the same here, the first race of the weekend at Brands Hatch. But Mike Dewhurst is absolutely with him. The gap has been fluctuating, but more recently it's been coming down, and that was a big look to the inside for Mike Dewhurst. I think just trying to unsettle Peter Hunter. The opportunity to force a mistake will once again rear its head, but at what point does he decide, I really need to commit to a move?
Yeah, it's as you get tired as a driver, as the tyres start to drop off as well, you don't quite get the performance and the levels of grip that you wanted. It is a warm day, so everything's feeling it. That's all you need, just a very small mistake. And Mike Dewhurst at the moment looks as though he is probably in a better place with his car and his tyres as a package than Peter Hunter. But, of course, he needs to just make sure that if he tries something, that it's a clean overtake, and he's having another little nibble as they go up towards Paddock Hill Bend. But again, that's more just to try and distract Peter Hunter. He's just too far away still, isn't he? Yeah,
filling the mirrors of Peter Hunter is Mike Dewhurst, as you said, just trying to force that mistake. Time is still afforded to Mike Dewhurst as to how many opportunities he has, but it is very rapidly approaching 0 plus the extra lap come the end of the race. Gilbert Yates in the lead back across the line as Pranav Vangala closed in. Yes, he has, and we have a car off the road.
We do, and that looks like it was Stephen Dobson that's had the problem. I think he'd already had one little squirrel sideways coming out of Druids and caught the moment. I'm afraid he's not caught the moment this time through. So you can see the damage to the left-hand side of his car as the car has sort of spun around on him, gone into the barriers there. So Stephen is just unplugging the communication system. Will, I'm sure, hop out of the car shortly with 4 minutes and 30 seconds to go, plus the extra lap. But for the moment, we will cover that with localised yellow flags.
We will indeed. Peter Hunter over the previous lap has managed to extend a bit more of a margin over Mike Dewhurst. Door open on Stephen Dobson, which is great to see as the Copa Shell lead battle works its way through the localised yellow zone in towards Graham Hill Bend. As a pair, they are closing in on some more traffic up the road. With 4 minutes to go, Mike Dewhurst, he's going to have to pull something special out, isn't he, and make use of every single ounce of life left in those Pirellis.
Yeah, that's Joseph Dean, which is the car that they're going to want to work their way through and past. So good to see Stephen Dobson out of the car. So he walks away, no doubt rather disgruntled with the way that the races panned out for him. The man who finished 3rd in the Copa Shell Championship standings last year has yet to get on the Copa Shell podium so far this year. The overall Copa Shell race leader, though, which is the light blue car in the hands of Peter Hunter, now has got traffic to deal with. They have caught Joseph Dean, and for Mike Dewhurst, they will have to wait and see. But checkered flag, by the look of things, is coming out early, so there were 3 minutes and 20 seconds still to go on the clock, plus the extra lap. But rather than throw the safety car for that stricken car of Stephen Dobson, the decision has been taken to display the checkered flag slightly early.
It has indeed. The Copa Shell battle still raging on. It is going to be Peter Hunter that might just make it to the line in time. Hunted all the way by Mike Dewhurst. A flash of the lights, but Peter Hunter back-to-back wins in Copa Shell. And Gilbert Yates follows up a 13th consecutive podium with another win.
Yeah, Gilbert Yates has been the man to beat in Ferrari Challenge UK. both in 2024 and in 2025. And there's Mike Dewhurst drawing himself alongside Peter Hunter. You see Peter Hunter fist out of the window. He'll have enjoyed that one. And blimey, he had to work for it as well. So there was never any let-up in the pressure at all, was there, on Peter Hunter for the lead of Copa-Shell. And whilst it got close for the lead of Trofeo Pirelli, Gilbert Yates was never truly under pressure from Pranav van Gala, who was always just at arm's length away, wasn't he?
Yes, he was indeed. So Gilbert Yates, 13 consecutive pole positions, and yes, another win. So winning both races at Alton Park, picking up where things left off for him, and Pranav van Gala just needed that extra little bit. Paul Simerson, brilliant race. He's on the podium after being promoted to Trofeo Pirelli.
He'll be as pleased as punch with that. He did say he thought an overall podium would be an aspiration that he would want to get to over this weekend, and here, our first race of the weekend, and he's there, so Simo will be more than pleased with that one. So the cars just working their way back down the pit lane area. Well, I'm sure we'll get some reaction as well, and of course we'll have the podiums to conduct as well down there. We'll also confirm some results for you shortly for what was, of course, just our first of 2 races this weekend for the Ferrari Challenge UK. But we swap, Jack, don't we? We're on the Indy circuit today. We swap to the Grand Prix circuit tomorrow. That is a very different challenge.
It's, yeah, a different beast, absolutely. Practice will be much busier, not used as much as the Indy circuit. And with the resurfacing works here at Brands Hatch, of course, making yourself, or getting yourself acquainted with how the Pirellis react to the changes in surface, the changes in sort of track condition as well. Peter Hunter, forever the character, up onto the roof with a celebration.
Yes, absolutely, a Peter Hunter-esque celebration that is there, but you can see him congratulating all of the team. You can also see that his driver coach was there, which is Fulvio Mussi, working with him this weekend, so an embrace between Fulvio and his driver. That will please JCT 600 as well, the Leeds-based Ferrari dealership, who very much as a dealership have racing in their blood as well, don't they, with John Tordoff owning that dealership, his son Sam Tordoff we've seen racing in the British Touring Car Championship. So let's go down to the pit lane. I think Amanda Stretton has managed to catch up with a very happy Peter Hunter.
I certainly have. Just whilst you're putting your drinks order in, Peter Hunter, winner in Copa-Shell, 2 of 2. We just saw that little display there of just how much this meant to you.
Bollocks. Sorry,
okay.
bollocks.
All right. Let's try and keep this PG. Well done. A great drive. And I mean, you had Mike bearing down on you all the way through, and he was looking for every gap possible.
Yeah, he was coming up my rear quite hard. Sorry. No, I had to stave him off. He was thirsty for me, and I just wasn't letting him pass. So yeah, it was good.
Right, Fulvio, you come over here. Come on, because I want to know what it's like. What it's like on the radio.
It's a roller coaster. It's enjoyable. No, it was really good. It's a completely different coaching style to how it was with last year with Gary Redmond, the year before with Paul Hogarth. But that's the coach's job, to understand what the driver needs and to get the best out of them.
We have seen a new Peter Hunter this year. Is that down to you?
I mean, he's got a new coach that might have something to do with it, but no, Pete's been, me and Pete have been in contact all winter.
Ozempic. It's down to Ozempic.
Pete's been training really hard. He's been focusing differently. Did a bit over the winter, and then when we started working together this year, he's certainly a different person to me. Yeah.
Right, great stuff, Peter. Congratulations. Enjoy that podium.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Amanda. Yeah, I think I said JCT 600 Leeds, but that's Darren Howell. Stratstone Manchester will be delighted with the win for Peter Hunter, so I'll correct myself there. Let's confirm the results for you then. Gilbert Yates claims the win with the checkered flag coming out just slightly early. Pranav van Gala was in second place, and Paul Simerson, moving up to Trofeo Pirelli, heads up onto the overall podium. Callum Leatham was 4th, and in 5th position is the winner of Copa-Shell. We've just heard from him, Peter Hunter. Mike Dewhurst was 6th, 2nd in Copa-Shell, and completing the Copa-Shell podium, 7th overall, Paul Rogers. Darren Howell was there in 8th place, ahead of John Marcar, who had a busy old race in 9th place. Paul Dixon completes the top 10. Then as we head outside of the top 10, finishing in 11th position is Joseph Dean, ahead of Hussein Sert. Stephen Dobson, who had that incident late on, at 13th, and Fedor Samarkov, with a couple of visits to the pit lane, will finish in 14th position. So that confirms the results for you. Let's go back down to the pit lane, where this time I think Dave Richardson has managed to catch up with somebody.
Yes, indeed. Gilbert Yates, who has a collection of Pirelli P1 hats to his name, that's for sure. It's been a dramatic day today, dramatic early finish to that race. Were you glad that that checkered flag came out early, Gilbert?
Yeah, absolutely, because it's a tough track. I mean, it's not my favourite. I could feel the tyres starting to get too hot, and Tom and me are telling me, calm it down, but it's so hard when you know you're near the end, so yeah.
How influential is Tom on the radio to you during the course of what has been a dramatic day, Gilbert?
Tom drives just from the garage. It's all Tom. He's the man. He's in my ear every corner.
I tell you what, I know that's not true, Tom, because this man is really talented, isn't he?
He's exceptionally talented. You know, I mean, for those who didn't watch qualifying, Gilbert was involved in a bit of contact, had a car that wasn't roadworthy by any means whatsoever. And with 3 minutes left on the clock, you know, we managed to get the damage repaired. There's a big tall ask without a time set on the board. He goes out.
Christmas, we didn't want a novel, did we, Gilbert? Many congratulations. Back to you guys.
Thanks a lot. Good to hear from our drivers there. Let's have a quick look at the highlights for the race we've just seen. There we go, the highlights from the race that we have just seen. A race which saw Paul Simerson finish in 3rd place overall in Trofeo Pirelli. And in Copa-Shell, we saw a good little fight with Mike Dewhurst coming through to finish in 2nd, as it was in Copa-Shell. Paul Rogers finishing 3rd in Copa-Shell, but the win in Copa-Shell went the way of Peter Hunter. His 2nd win back-to-back for him in Copa-Shell. You wait for one, and a bit like buses, two come along at once. In Trofeo Pirelli, Paul Simerson, who stepped up from Copa-Shell to Trofeo Pirelli this weekend, finished 3rd overall. He'll be absolutely delighted with that, as will the car that finished in 2nd place, Pranav Vangala, who keeps up this strong performance that he's had all the way so far throughout the 2025 championship season. But it's the reigning champion, who proudly carries the #1 and leads the championship, Gilbert Yates, that claims his win, and that gives him now 4 wins for the 2025 championship season. Well, we reached the halfway point of the 2025 championship season now after that race. Gilbert Yates leads the championship on 84 points. He is 17 points ahead of Pranav Vangala, who's 2nd in the championship, and Callum Leatham remains 3rd in the championship. John Markar is there in 4th ahead of Bal Sidhu, and Fedor Samrakov is next up. Hamandra Pillai, who is not here this weekend, is in 7th place, and neither is the driver in 8th place, which is Oscar Renjevic with Joseph Dean and Paul Simerson completing the top 10 in Trofeo Pirelli. As we look towards the championship points in Copa-Shell at the halfway point of the 2025 championship season, it is Mike Dewhurst, who has a slender gap now, just 9 points between himself and Peter Hunter in 2nd place. Paul Simerson is 3rd in Copa-Shell, but of course he's now moved to Trofeo Pirelli for the rest of the year, so he's not at the moment going to add to that tally. Paul Rogers is 4th, ahead of Stephen Dobson and Paul Dixon. Then it's Darren Howell, Asayan Sert, Johnny Satchel and Sean Rann that complete the top 10 in Copa-Shell. We have reached the halfway point of the championship season, Jack, and it's all still to play for as we head towards tomorrow's race on the Grand Prix circuit.
It is indeed. That is all tomorrow. What's left of today? We've still got the podium. Back down to the pit lane, where we will be able to see our Copa-Shell and Trofeo Pirelli podiums for the first race of the weekend here at Brands Hatch.
welcome to the podium then. The first run of the weekend here at Brands Hatch. And in time-honoured tradition, it's going to be a Ferrari Challenge Trofeo Pirelli that we salute first of all. Big it up then for taking P3 in a Trofeo Pirelli race, Paul Simerson. It was a hard fought, but he was chasing at the end, Pranav Vangala. And P1 on the top step of the Pirelli podium, it's Gilbert Yates. And of course, we invite a member of the management team from Charles Hurst, the winning dealer, to join us on the podium as well. And the trophies today to be presented by Federico Pastorelli, Ferrari North Europe Regional Manager. So first and foremost, Paul Simerson then receives his first Trofeo Pirelli trophy. Well done, Paul. Pranav Vangala, P2 trophy. I make mention of the fact Pranav was the very first to go and congratulate race winner Gilbert Yates as well. What a big man. And of course, Gilbert receives his P1 trophy, and the Copa Team trophy, of course, is presented to the dealer, Charles Hurst. Now, that's not it, because, of course, we have Pirelli Motorsport with their fantastic trophy to be awarded as well. Giuliano Arizio makes the Pirelli award to Gilbert Yates. So, if you follow the photographer's instructions with regards to where you place your trophies, gentlemen, so that we can get the best possible picture of these fine figures of gentlemen up there on the podium here at Brands Hatch, and Paul Simerson. Oh no, it's time. They didn't wait. There's normally a cue from me. To heck with it, they said. They're going to celebrate. Well done to our Ferrari Challenge Trofeo Pirelli drivers as they celebrate up there on the podium. We will, of course, get the mop out and sort it out before we go to the Copa Shell podium in just a moment. Fantastic stuff. I'm watching from the corner of my eye, just in case somebody approaches with a bottle, you know. So well done to them all. Great stuff. So, podium being ready then for Copa Shell, which will be our next podium. Drivers are standing by. Claudio, who puts the bottles out there. Incidentally, I should say, I know it's a bit in advance, but happy birthday, Claudio, for Monday. 6 and 3. 6 and 3. That's what he said to me. Right. Here comes our Copa Shell podium. Please give it up. Taking P3, here is Paul Rogers. P2 is Mike Dewhurst. And with a sense and spirit of foreboding, to the top step of the podium, Peter Hunter. And of course, the dealer's Copa Team trophy will be presented to a member from Stratstone, Manchester. Federico Pastorelli, once again, Ferrari North Europe Regional Manager, making the trophy presentation. First of all, well done, Paul Rogers. P3. P2 for Mike Dewhurst. And then the big trophy, the big #1, to Peter Hunter on the top step of the podium. Copa Team trophy, of course, presented to Stratstone, Manchester. And gentlemen, listen to the photographer, please, for the instructions with regard to the perfect photograph which will grace the motorsport media across the coming week. So, oh no, this is all going to descend into chaos now, I feel sure. With Peter Hunter, of course, trying to get the other two into trouble at exactly the same time. So there we have it. Time for champagne then. Oh, goodness me. Ben, my cameraman, got a little bit more of it than I did, to be fair. But there we have it. The podium's down here, done and dusted for Ferrari Challenge, Trofeo Pirelli and Copa Shell. Thank you and well done to all the drivers. Let's go back right now to Mark and Jack Werrell in the studio.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, so that brings our first day of action to a conclusion, Jack. It's been an interesting day. It was really tight in qualifying. Shame we didn't get all of the race in, but we got it all in other than 2 or 3 minutes. But tomorrow, Grand Prix circuit, that is really challenging for the drivers.
It really is. Plenty to look forward to, lots more undulation change, finer margins for mistake. And the pressure is on because we are now in the final half of the championship season in 2025. So place your bets. Let's see what is going to happen tomorrow. Still lots undecided.
There is, yeah, so we'll get free practice underway at 10 o'clock in the morning. We will have qualifying taking place just before midday, and our race will get underway at around about 3:30 tomorrow. So, from the whole of the team at Ferrari Challenge UK, from Amanda and Dave down there in the pit lane, myself, Mark and Jack up in the commentary box, thanks for joining us today. We'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye.